We will formally start our we will start our session and people can join us later in the session. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on our study launch event today titled for Fostering Solar PV in High Loss Feeders, Optimal Business and Solution Model Solutions. My name is Rida Fatma and I'm working as a research associate with Policy Research Institute for Equitable Development. PRIDE. PRIDE is an autonomous research think tank dedicated to promote policy-oriented research. We develop evidence-based and political viable strategies to advance the goal of climate neutrality and are committed to exchanging, sharing, and collaborating about research and strategies through discussing lessons learned, utilizing synergies, and building up our capacity with additional resource and skill training. Our policy proposals are practical and free of ideological commitments. As we all know that Pakistan's power sector has been facing chronic energy crisis for decades now, and electricity reliability is one of them. Despite the recent increase in generation capacity, the country still lacks access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable supply of electricity. The recurring debt in the power sector and sustained transmission and distribution losses have completely stretched the resource. Sorry. So the decade-old go-to measures of power curtailment in high-loss areas are also provide counterproductive in ensuring fair energy accessibility. One option that remained overlooked in addressing this prevailing issue is the distributed PV diffusion in high-loss areas. So the purpose of the study was to address the issue, and this study will feed into the national debate on developing and enabling policy and regulatory framework for solarizing high loss feeders and look at organization model solution for optimal replacement of distribution generation. My colleague Harmain Zahid and Manzoor Ahmed will be sharing the findings of the study with us. Both Harmain and Manzoor are working as a research associate with PRIDE. So we have three distinguished guests with us today. One is Naila Saleh and Saad Hassan Latif and Mr. Amjad Islam. Naila Saleh is a project manager at Agora, and she's also working as a technical partner with PRIDE. And Mr. Saad Hassan is an independent consultant, and Mr. Amjad Islam is working as a deputy manager regulation at PESCO. Thank you all for joining us today. Before starting our session formally, I would like to define the house rules first. So every speaker has allocated time of 10 minutes. Please turn on your cameras while you're talking and respect the allocated time. We have dedicated question answer session at the end of the event, but feel free to write your questions in comment box and we would happy to answer. Our speakers would be happy to answer that. Please raise your hand if you have any question. I will unmute you. So without wasting our time, I would like to invite to Mr. Harmain Zahid to present the findings of the study. Over to you, Harmain.
Thank you, Rida. Let me share my screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Harmain. Am I audible, Rida?
Yes, you are.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This presentation is on our study titled Fostering Solar PV in High Loss Feeders, Optimal Business Model Solutions. So this study has three broad objectives. First is to define pathway for reducing losses, improving reliability of power supply, and accelerating RE growth through solarizing high loss feeders. Second is to conceptualize the barriers and drivers for the deployment of solar in high loss areas. While the third objective is to explore practical, sustainable, and politically feasible business model solutions in this regard. So the need of the study arises from the fact that in Pakistan, the average T&D losses are 20.3%, due to which we suffered a loss of 110.4 billion in year 2021, out of which 71 billion rupees were due to the technical losses. The financial loss due to theft and low recovery reached rupees 39.42 billion during the same year. Unfortunately, this has been significantly contributing towards the country's circular debt. As you can see in the figure, NEPRA has defined a T&D loss limit for each DISCO through consumer and tariff evaluations. However, we see that these limits have been breached continuously by a majority of the utilities. But despite all of this, the government is continuing to bail out DISCO every year to keep them afloat. We have taken K Electric as a case study because it's the first distribution company in Pakistan that developed and implemented load shedding schedules based on ATC, which are aggregated technical and commercial losses on each feeder. Unfortunately, the strategy has resulted in even poor service quality to customers, especially those who are residing in high loss areas. So we have segmented the data that we acquired from K Electric into feeder-wise loss categories. You can see that in year 2022, almost 992 feeders out of average 1800 feeders of K Electric, 992 feeders have losses up to 20%, while 348 feeders have losses between 20 to 40%. The rest of the feeders have losses even more than that. Similarly, over the years, there is a consistent difference between the amount billed and the amount recovered by the utilities. So we can say that it is due to the ATC losses. We have seen that it is due to ATC losses. And this high ATC losses points towards flawed expansion plans, as well as long feeders, overloading of transformers, and commercial losses like theft and billing inaccuracies. And a major factor is administrative inaccuracies among the utilities. But even so, K Electric's performance has been relatively better as compared to other DISCOs in the country. And we can say that the situation is even worse among the others. So to understand the local factors and preconditions which could potentially drive solar PV growth, we have looked into the, we have conducted a survey to investigate the drivers and barriers that encourage or discourage consumers from installing a solar PV. For this purpose, we surveyed 1,450 households from 76 high loss feeders. And these feeders have a loss percentage greater than 50%. So we looked at the concerns of the consumers regarding forced electricity outage, preferred alternate energy source, their willingness to switch to solar, and the financial constraints, that is their affordability to adopt solar PV. And we gauged their sentiments against their socioeconomic status, current situation of the bills, load shedding, and awareness about their technology. So we found out that almost 44.1% of the households claim difficulty to meet both ends in the current income. Among them, households are spending 10 to 15% of their monthly expenditure on electricity bills. On average, 55% of the surveyed households claim that they have faced some sort of difficulty in paying their current bills. We even came across the consumers who are spending more than 12,000 rupees on electricity a month, and they are also facing 7 to 8 hours of load shedding. About 70.6% responded that they are relying on grid provided energy. 87.6% expressed high installation cost of PV system as a major barrier in adopting to solar. Although the data also showed that 43.25% of the households are very serious to adopt solar. So we questioned them about their willingness to adopt solar if government provide loans, to which almost 31.3% responded positively. And we questioned that if government provide them with the technology at subsidized rate, almost 21.2% were totally willing to go to solar PV systems. So we came to the conclusion that despite of willingness to install solar, the socioeconomic situation and limited resource does not allow people to go for host-owned installations, which is a current regime in our country. So solarizing high-loss feeders should not be hampered due to the economic situation of the people. Rather, it needs thoughtful business model solutions that can accommodate them. So we have concluded that we need a reliable power supply and a loss reduction strategy. So our approach is to place the PV systems in proximity to load centers and fulfill the demand of the people on then and there basis, thereby avoiding the long distribution lines or the feeders. So this approach will result in cost saving also, apart from the loss saving. So the question is how? So this method will differ transformer and line upgrades and will delay the equipment maintenance. If we couple this strategy with, if we couple the distributed generation, this strategy and with demand side management, we can reduce utilities variable cost and they can defer the capacity investments. That is the investment they need to build new facilities. So we can say that the optimal placement of solar PV will act as a grid support tool by providing better energy balance, better power quality, improved economics, and value addition for both the consumers and the utility. As a proof of concept, we have gone through the success stories of Sri Lanka, India, and Brazil. We have seen that in Sri Lanka, they have penetrated DG in 4 grid substations. And they have shown that there's a direct proportion between DG and financial savings. As for India is concerned, India also has very high losses, about 20 to 40% in their grid. But they took some RE-based initiatives through IPPs, which brought down the losses from 55% to 9%. Similarly, in Brazil, an initiative is taken to install 161 solar PV systems by 2023. And they are expected to generate almost 1 billion euros in investment. Also, they are expected to reduce the technical losses by 185 gigawatt hours. And all of this apart from the social benefit. So to sum up, we need a grand bargain between consumers and those who run the system to ensure an energy future with least cost and most participation. Next, my colleague Manzoor will discuss the optimal business model solutions with you. Thank you. Over to you, Manzoor.
Thank you, Arman. In order to have a viable model that can assist the solar PV uptake in high loss configuration, we must first have to address a couple of questions that how do we push solar sited PV in high loss utilities? Number second is what is the alternatives to existing host-on solutions? And number 3 is what is the enabling or facilitative environments that would be needed? So following that, the desirable characteristic for any business model would be to ensure protection of consumer and build their trust on utility, improve billing recovery on the part of a distribution company or utility, empowering utilities in terms of conducting their business, for example, solar business, encourage private involvement through investment, and the 5th one is framework of realistic tariff mechanism. So next slide. Next slide, Arman.
Wait a second. There's a glitch in the system. Here you go.
So globally and regionally, solar PV uptake is quite invariable. There is no set standard of which model to be used. Based on the ownership, the business models are classified into 3 types. Number 1 is the dealer model. Number 2 is consumer community ownership, and number 3 is the third-party ownership. In context of Pakistan, two models are very important. One is the third-party solar model, and the other is public-private partnership. So in third-party model, the solar developer installs a system. It is connected to the grid, and customers receive the electricity below the grid electricity rate. So, and its structure begins with the procurement. So procurement is done through utilities. Tariff mechanism is based on gross metering instead of net metering. So there is no netting off of units. It also takes into account the installation cost, operation and maintenance cost as well. So in terms of financing, to have an ease of doing business, dedicated lines are set up from national and international development banks. And to remove the bureaucratic and administrative bottlenecks, one window operation is ensured. And for the collection of recovery and billing, discos are also involved. And in public-private partnership, there are two types. One is the full ownership of utility, and other is the mutual ownership with third party. So these both varies in terms of their operation. So the basic structure begins with procurement is done through the third party. Tariff is based on the whatever that regulated tariff that is being placed. So since the utility is involved, so bankability and access to finance is easier. So public-private co-financing, construction loans, public institution, etc., can also get involved. So in terms of execution and operation, so utility builds these. So utility can ask the third party to oversee the whole operation and then hand over to the utility, or this operation goes towards the developer itself, and the revenue is differentiated based on their shares. And for payments of bills, utility or third party can collect their bills as per the agreement. And one interesting model which can also be explored in context of Pakistan is community solar. So in community solar, a consumer subscribe to community solar, and based on their share, they get monthly credits. So subscription is either based on capacity purchases, lease agreements, or power purchase agreements. So it has to be a long-term contract. So the loans or lease agreements can also be incorporated in these agreements. And this is either owned by the utility or the third-party developers. So proper tariff and metering infrastructure is very important. So based on accurate price signals, the cost-effective framework to formulate by managing the solar resource and temporal role profile can be achieved. So if we incorporate time of day tariff mechanism, so customers can not only change their demand pattern, but it will also reduce their peak load demand. And similarly, the integration of advanced metering infrastructure for peak load management, it will also help in identification of high loss areas, as well as improving recovery ratio. Globally and regionally, feed-in tariff mechanisms are nowadays being used. So in third-party and community distribution solar, feed-in tariff is usually used. So in the feed-in tariff, the average tariff is below the retail tariff. So there is no netting off of units. So the accumulated sum of energy being generated in a particular community solar is all exported to the grid. So by issuing a long-term contracts and purchase agreements, we can also avoid the threat of becoming stranded in terms of stranded assets, and DGs will help in the value addition of utility infrastructure overall. So we already are aware of the implications of US dollar indexation in other energy projects. So by protecting the investors from the risks of rupee devaluation, we have exposed the customers to the same risks, and now we will have to bear the high price of electricity. So we need to explore the idea of indexing less than 50% of tariff rates to the US dollar for new renewable energy projects. Similarly, the state bank financing scheme can also be improved by reducing the levelized cost of energy of these new renewable energy projects. Next one. So the focus should be the information asymmetry for investors and project developer. So we can provide a one window operation and long-term contracts which will enforce the information asymmetry. We can speed up the process for the development and implementation of such projects, and we can document these agreements as a standardized legal and commercial on the commercial models that should be accessible to everyone. So instead of implementing this policy in haste, so what the stakeholders or decision makers can do is to develop a single project on a pilot basis and identify high loss feeder areas of particular DISCO and develop a pricing mechanism for the projects, their cost, process, developing financing instruments, and then scale up gradually afterwards. We can mold the system according to our needs. What are the tariff rates? What should be the if we conduct a pilot before implementing, it would be a better approach in terms of implementing the policy. Next. So, so any further roadmap should ensure the provision of reliable, affordable, and adequate electricity supply to end users. It must provide value to electric utilities by reducing their active power loss, provide value to overall power sectors, and help in value addition by reducing the circular debt, increase use of clean and renewable energy, ensure financial viability of investments in this sector, and more timely and quick intervention solution must also be ensured. So finally, our study illustrates that the existing whole stone solution, which are as of now operational in Pakistan, will fail in terms of solarizing these high loss areas. The demand forces for PV systems are very strong despite the uncertainties surrounding the the solar business models, etc. And there should be innovative business model solutions which must be incorporated into the overall policy framework in Pakistan. So thank you. I'll ask Naila to.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Manzoor. Thank you. So now we will move on to our speakers. So we will be taking questions at the end of the session, or you can write your questions in the comment box and our speakers can answer that. So our first speaker is Naila Saleh. She will be talking about the planning process for net zero decarbonizations. Over to you, Naila.
Thank you, Rida. Thank you for the invitation to this session, and thank you, Harman and Manzoor, for the very insightful presentation. I think it is fantastic to talk about these different solutions and exchange experiences and learn from each other a possible way forward on this important subject area. Now, the distribution losses in Pakistan are more than twice the world average, and we have kind of normalized it and built social acceptance for it, which is unfortunate. And apart from these losses, the indiscriminate load shedding by utilities in high loss areas is a critical spatial injustice, which unfortunately again has not received the attention that it deserves. And overall, both the losses and the regional disparities in electricity access, they present a significant challenge. And amid these challenges, the potential for rooftop solar and sited PV uptake is significant. In fact, it offers a complement necessary for a just development-oriented and low-carbon energy transition, not only for improving economics by reducing the losses in the distribution sector and by putting an end to the load shedding, but also for net zero decarbonization. Pakistan has a positive advantage from starting a planning process which is more oriented towards sustainable and clean energy supply, rather than trying to use an old planning system that was made for different goals and for old technologies. And of course, in the context, high loss areas present a huge market opportunity. So the striking question actually is, what makes it so difficult, right? Or why don't we see the penetration of solar PV already in these regions, or why these business models have not been implemented to date? I mean, if you look at the drivers, technology improvements, cost declines have already increased the potential for solar PV over time. And in the context, the extensive power cuts and interrupted supply, as we see the results from the surveys, and the ideal dwelling landscape in terms of physical availability and suitability of rooftop spaces, as well as the dwelling ownership, where majority of the households, end users tend to live in the premises where they are using the energy. All these factors illustrate a huge market opportunity for the solarization drive. These opportunities aside, there are many challenges to realizing the huge potential. The high upfront cost of the technology, challenges in availing finance, information asymmetry, all these stand in the way of higher penetration, especially in the residential sector. So yes, innovative business model interventions could offer the best solutions to addressing these challenges, and these models are implemented all over the globe. But the implantation of these models would require thoughtful application of a range of an introduction of a range of policy and regulatory levers to stimulate efficient, sustainable investment in these new technologies. Because the appetite of any business to invest in such models would rely on the tariff design, on other policy factors, but importantly, the ease of doing business, the administrative feasibility of investment. Actually, things could be so much easier if the utilities and the regulator, being incumbents, could potentially play an important role by leveraging their close relationship with consumers and different institutions. They could take active measures to ensure a smooth and streamlined tendering process for the integration of these innovative business model solutions by rolling out the necessary regulations, tariff system, and onboarding all the relevant actors in the socio-technical system in a way that it should be a perfect setup for investors. And more thinking also needs to go into well-planned integration of this added capacity and flexibility of customer-sided solar, as energy costs are continuously, solar PV technology costs are continuously falling. With it, now these days, the cost of batteries are also falling, and with it, we are looking at a second transition. Right economic signals need to be set for coupling solar with distributed energy storage, which will provide much needed flexibility on the distribution network. It will allow customers to consume more solar generation on site rather than exporting to the grid, and this could unlock a much higher penetration of solar at the decentralized level. In addition to storages, flexing loads can also be done in many other ways, like including energy consumption behavior, changing energy consumption behavior, and using time of use tariffs. So the realization of these benefits from these technologies, while avoiding the potential adverse effects of large-scale solarization drive would demand coordinated development. And the objective should be to achieve maximum solar build-out in a well-managed way from the very start, because if left unmanaged, there is a limit to how much solar can be connected to the grid before the quality of supply is compromised, and a range of technical challenges posed by the solar start affecting the grid. Importantly, the timing of the energy transition and application of these new solutions would be crucial for the overall political economy of the whole discussion, because of the growing demand and rapid generation expansion, we have a specified window for investment. And it is much easier to fill this window with these new technologies like solar before conventional energy take over, and also to avoid stranded assets of conventional energy sources in future. So for strategic areas in high loss configuration, this timing should be even more important because of the regular high cost of the losses in the distribution sector and these billions that are costed to the national exchequer. Yeah, with this I would conclude, and I would say that political for implementation of these business models, for taking up these novel ideas, political will would be indispensable. This market needs a proper tendering framework and set of regulations for active engagement by corporate sector, and importantly, planned and coordinated growth is the need of our for fostering solar PV in general and in strategic areas. Yeah, with this I would conclude. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naila, and I totally agree with you that this is the right time as the cost of electricity is at its peak right now. So how do you look at the positive advantages of the new planning process towards more rapid rooftop solar drive, especially in the high loss configuration?
Rita, would you repeat your question, please?
Sure. So how do you look at the positive advantages for the new planning process towards a more rapid rooftop solar drives, especially in the high loss configuration?
Yeah, I think the short crux or the nutshell of this, of course, would be the implementation of these business model solutions. And I think the study which has been carried out, it does highlight a very good framework and a very good way forward for this new planning.
Okay. Thank you so much, Naila, for your insight. Now, our next speaker is Mr. Saad Latif, and he'll be talking about the facilitative regulations for solar drives. Over to you, Mr. Saad.
Thank you so much, Rida, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much. It's an honor to be part of this study and research, and to get the opportunity to speak at this forum. I wanted to start with my congratulations to the team at Pride for coming up with this research and study to educate policymakers and distribution companies on how best they could address some of the biggest problems being faced. I wanted to emphasize, coming from the distribution companies, or having worked with with K Electric in particular, the struggle with dealing or reducing high loss areas is a big one, and the ideas being proposed in this research and study are something that the discourse can very much look into in terms of the application and practicality. There definitely needs to be a change in the policy framework, but the initiative taken by Pride to educate the policymakers and also, let's say, the different stakeholders along with the discourse that would lead to the initiation or of such changes and discussions. I'm very excited about the possibility of, as Manzoor mentioned earlier, the community solar coming into Pakistan. I definitely feel there is a lot of value that the discos and the customer and consumers can derive from such initiatives. Also, the plugging in of the instruments like feed-in tariff that can give a lot more independence to developers or generators to then directly connect with the end consumer to plug-in technologies or services that can serve the needs of these customers. Having said all of that, this will not be an easy task. The power framework across Pakistan is very, very heavily regulated, and to make any drastic change or would require all stakeholders to be on board to make that implementation happen. This is, in my opinion, a great starting point for such engagements, and the we hope that the stakeholders will take notice of this research. This research will or this study will initiate the relevant discussions in the different quarters, and also then take up to frame the implementation of the recommendations that are coming out of it. I would again stress that amongst some of the many challenges that the power sector faces, high loss areas or the customers who are not paying on time or who are not paying for electricity at all are one of the biggest problems that these discos face. The root cause of these problems can be attributed to multiple inputs, including economic challenges, but however, it is also attributed directly to the behaviors of the customers in these areas. By providing options as proposed in this paper to these customers, I do feel that the customers would then also get more involved or become more responsible citizens in addressing their power consumption or paying their power bills on time. The overall effect of having such a implementation coming into play would be very fruitful, because once we have these reduced losses on faced by the discos, it has a multi-pronged effect. It not only, let's say, helps improve the service that is being given to these end customers, it also improves the financial health of the discos, resulting into a much more stable power sector in the country. It also helps reduce the circular debt that is coming into play. We're also reducing parts of the subsidies that the government is dispersing to for some of the customers with low energy consumption. Interestingly, most of these customers would be found in these high loss areas. So not only reducing subsidies, but as I mentioned earlier, this directly improves the customer experience that these customers or consumers are getting from the discos. I again would stress this is the first step in amongst the many that will be coming in this direction, and just want to again end by congratulating the Pride team for for taking these bold steps and getting into this very difficult subject along with the different policymakers and the different stakeholders, including the discos across Pakistan. Thank you so much for this time. Thank you, Rida, for sharing this, for having me over as a speaker on this forum.
Thank you so much, Saad, for your comments and for praising this our colleagues to put their effort in the study. So, what are So, what do you think? What are the enabling regulations that will facilitate the solarization of high loss distribution meters? What are the regulations that should be in place before for moving into the process?
So the current regulatory framework is very much focusing on the DISCO as the sole energy provider, but and hence limiting all power to be generated by IPPs or GENCOs to be then bought by the DISCOs and then to be consumed by the customers. So one big round the corner development is that of the CTBCM, the competitive bilateral trading markets, which inshallah will be starting as early as next year. The CTBCM currently focuses on large energy customers, customers that have an energy demand of more than 1 megawatt. Excuse me. Excuse me for that. So, but there is the CTBCM is being framed to come into play later on for residential customers as well. That is one big enabler that is just around the corner, especially for large energy customers. The other enabler I feel is that of the mini-grids policy that the regulator is exploring these days. I feel that also enables the development of such models, although mini-grids, let's say, are more isolated from the networks of DISCOs. However, the regulatory framework that comes into play over there can be very much used to implement some of the ideas that are being presented in this paper. So these are the two main highlights I would want to point out, and from the regulatory framework that can be considered as enablers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Saad, for your inputs. Our next speaker is Mr. Amjad Islam, and he'll be discussing the proactive role of DISCOs in the solar tribe. Over to you, Amjad sir. Amjad sir, are you? Yes. I have sent you a request to unmute yourself. Can you please? Okay, so please write your questions in the comment box, and our speakers will be happy to answer that. And meanwhile, I will get in contact with Mr. Amjad.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm experiencing some technical issues, so I'm not sure. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you please turn on your video if it's possible for you?
Well, I have a low bandwidth, so it will be better to turn off the video, I guess.
No problem. So you can share your screen. You said you have a presentation.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me. Let me congratulate your students who have worked on this beautiful, excellent report. The problem is in DISCOs, we have all over the Pakistan, except from KE, obviously, we have a really heavy regulated environment. And we have very limited space for maneuvering, so we don't have many options to implement and to accept and give space to new ideas. And ideas like these to have some kind of system on the 11 kV feeder, especially on the high loss feeder. I would say it's a thoroughly an out of the box solution. Unfortunately, we don't have such kind of ideas coming from inside the company or inside the management, or we don't have such kind of environment where we can apply and experience these kind of ideas. But I'm really happy, and I must appreciate Harman and Manzoor and other students who have contributed in this report, because we need such kind of ideas from our young blood, especially who are working and will be deciding many crucial decisions in the future. These kind of ideas will help a lot in at least starting a debate in the power sector to think out of the box and give space and accept and accommodate other ideas which can prove beneficial for the sector as a whole. So secondly, let me share with you my just one slide for you. Yes. So I hope everybody can see this slide. Hello?
Yes, we can see it. Can you share? Okay, so yes, we can see it, but do you have put it on the slide show or option or not? Because it's really small. Okay, so now it's good. You can go ahead.
So I have actually clipped this slide from the recent IGCEP that was presented by the NTDC, which is now our system operator for the market coming future. So you can see that government itself is thinking about on the some new ideas on especially penetration of the PV solar on the 11 kV feeder, apart from net metering, which is already in place throughout Pakistan. And they have presented this slide, this data in the new IGSEP presentation to the regulator. Some of you might have been present on that presentation on when they were presenting to the regulator. So they are also thinking, the government is also thinking on these lines. They are thinking on solar feeder penetration on the high loss, or at least we have some kind of solar installation on the 11 kV feeder in the discos. So this is a big step in the right direction. I mean, it's aligned with especially with this report. If you can see in the light of this report, that government is already thinking on these lines, and they are thinking about penetration of solar, especially at utility level, 11 kV, and the net metering, along with other wind and renewable energy. But the most stunning issue, I would say, and critical issue that we are facing in disco, we have a high loss feeder, which is in, if I just talk about my own company. So we have more than 50% of our feeders who have more than 20% loss on 11 kV feeders. I mean, if you take national average loss, it's 20%. So with the table on the right, you can easily say that we have different feeders based on category of losses. We can see that we are observing load shedding on these feeders from 8 hours to 16 hours, and the number of consumers that are being affected by these load shedding or load management, it's huge. I mean, millions of people are being affected by those load sheddings. And this is not the load shedding because of the shortage of capacity. This is the revenue load shedding. We call it revenue load shedding because we are facing huge loss on these feeders, and we have curtailed the energy based on our losses. We have made a schedule on the base of AT&C, and on the base of AT&C, we are providing only energy for those hours in the off-peak, especially in the off-peak hours, which are not contributing or adding to the loss further. So you can see that if you take the average loss 20% or 20 to 40, there are 430 feeder which are facing 8 hours loss, and it's affecting almost more than 2 million people. So these 2 million it's a consumer, it's a per meter. So if you take the average family size of like 4 people, so you can divide with 4, and you can imagine that how many people are facing this load and power cuts, load management and power cuts in a 24 hours cycle. From 50 to 80%, there are 1,315 feeders, and they are facing 12 hours load shedding in a 24 hours day-night cycle. And again, on above 80, you can see 65 feeders, which are facing 16, and maybe in some instances, we can say more than 16 hours load shedding. So this is a dilemma and the big challenge we are facing in discos, and it's almost in Pakistan, out of 10 discos, it's the same kind of situation, and almost 8 to 5 bad performing discos. And the irony is, the fate is, nobody's talking about, nobody is even thinking about them. I mean, that's such a huge population of Pakistan is facing power cuts. So you can imagine and think that what will be their lifestyle, how they are being affected by these power cuts, what will be their social and their commercial, their businesses, and their all routine activities which are being affected by these power cuts. I mean, it's not only an losses and energy shortage or energy curtailment issue. It's a social issue. I mean, we need a whole new paradigm of thinking to think about these people. We have to uplift their lifestyle, their livings, and it's a matter of national development and a matter of uplifting the lifestyle, the living standards of the people. So uh, coming back to regulations, if I talk about the practicality of this particular study, we have very limited space for the implementation of such kind of ideas. And the only thing we have is the microgrid regulation, which are being released by the NEPRA just, I think, a year and a half ago. But that is only for the off-grid model. That is a model which is being given option to the people. Then you can go off-grid for a microgrid levels business model and provide electricity to the consumers. Apart from that, in the current scenario, it's really limited options, but at least I'm happy that at least these ideas are popping out, and hopefully with the passage of time, especially as my friend Saad has just mentioned a while ago, actually, the CTBCM, the wholesale market is coming and starting from the next year. And that will, we have some place in the wholesale market, especially if somebody is going for a 11 kV solar installation to provide to the bulk consumer above 1 megawatt and such kind of consumer. But to come to the level of 11 kV feeder, mixed feeder, which is providing to the general public, we still don't have any options, at least for the time being. And ideas like these will hopefully come in the future, and these ideas, these studies like these will help those policymakers, those decision makers, to at least have some kind of precedence or some kind of policy ideas, or I would say some policy parameters which can, on the basis of which they can help, they can decide for the future and give some options to the discourse if in the future, maybe, let's hope. Thank you very much. That's all for me.
Thank you so much, Azad Saab, and it's really relieved to hear from you that discourse would be like you are open to hear the ideas and you like the ideas, and we will be happy to share with you in future too. So we have one question from Irfan. I will unmute you and you can ask your question. So I have sent you a request. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Rita. It's not a kind of a question, rather a gesture of positive note from my side as supporting the study that has been commissioned, and giving you a perspective how the government has been looking at different things and how different applications are not being considered at various level. First of all, I would say that this is a wonderful effort and very prolific suggestions, a very forward-thinking suggestion. Yes, the high loss feeders and high loss areas have been a major source of concern for most of us. And that is why the government has been eagerly looking at different kind of options to how to mitigate those. Solarization of those areas where the losses are very high is already on the cards. The proposal has been discussed at various forums within the regulator and the policy implementers as well. There are some discussions with regards to allowing higher net metering options for those high loss areas, as well as solarizing and independent, making those consumers independent of the grid, so that the distribution companies eventually reduces their losses which have been occurring within their systems. In addition, the government is also looking at installing solar systems at the level of 11 kV with the view for two options, two basically reasons. Number one, providing electricity at the near the load centers, and second, helping the grid to get electricity from the nearest generation source, and that will eventually help reducing the losses. The famous 10,000 megawatt solar plant that this new government has been propagating since last 5 months. This entail at least 4 distributed generation applications. Number one, solarization of tube wells. Number two, solarization of high loss areas. Number three, distributed generation, including solarizing the public sector buildings. Number four, bringing the solar at the 11 kV level, the distribution, and promoting net metering. Number five. These are the distributed generation options that have been considered. In addition, so there are regulations announced by the regulator for promoting microgrids for setting up the off-grid solutions for providing access of electricity in the remote areas. So, given the circumstances and the situation that the country is facing, and the how the policy makers are not thinking that how the future can be looked at while having hold of all technological developments and taking help of all those suggestions that the civil society and experts like you people are giving to take those forward and implement in the better interest of the country. These are already been considered. I think the analysis that have been made will definitely pave ways to understand by the government to better comprehend the economic side as well. So I think this is going to be a very good input. Thank you, Rida.
Thank you so much, Irfan sir, for taking your time out, and it was really great to have you in our session, because we need experts like you to hear our voices. So, and I'm glad that government is already considering these options. So we have one question from Shahida Tahir. Shahida, I would unmute you and you can. Yes, over to you, Shahida.
Hello. So I wanted to basically just get the clarification that when we say solarization of high loss feeders, is it what does it exactly mean? Is it what form will it take? Is it net metering? Is it what is it? Like in a very simple words, if you can explain.
Naila, can you answer the question? Okay, I will unmute you. Sorry for this trouble.
Yeah, just to briefly answer, so this could be done under different arrangements. It could be done like with third-party investors. Tariff arrangement could be carried out with power purchase agreement, or for community solar, virtual net metering could be. Virtual net metering is like used globally as a regulatory framework.
Okay, so Naila, I do have a question. So do we need a sorry, so do we need any infrastructure to implement these market models, or we can do it with existing infrastructure? I know that we don't need a extensive transmission and distribution system, but is there any extra infrastructure is required for these to implement these models?
I think for on-grid systems, usually you are using the same distribution network. So we are not talking about any additional infrastructure apart from decentralized or behind the meter batteries. But if these kind of initiatives are going to be taken in off-grid areas, then for building these microgrids or building the lines, then of course it would require some additional infrastructure.
Thank you so much. So anyone else, if you have any question, please raise your hand. I will unmute you, or you can write your questions in comment box. Also, I will share my email address with you all. You can write me an email if you have any question, and we can answer you from there. So thank you so much, everyone. The time of the session is almost ended. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Harmain and Manzoor, for doing this kind of extensive research for us. And we will, we would like to, if you have any plans to further do it on other dispos, we would be happy to share it with all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a good day. Thank you.